Hi, my name is Jack Rackham, and today I'm going to show you the family tree of the Alaouite dynasty of Morocco. The current king of Morocco, Mohammed VI, is a member of this dynasty. That means that the Alawites have ruled the Kingdom of Morocco, the official name of the country, for about 350 years. We will be going over how they established a sultanate that reached a golden age under a ruler who supposedly had 1,000 children, to the time when it came under European domination, and we will end with the present day in which it is now one of the most stable monarchies across the Islamic world and Africa. This video was made in a two-channel collaboration with Hikmah History. Whereas I will be talking about the entire Alaouite dynasty, Hikmah History will be focusing in greater detail on the reign of the greatest Alaouite ruler, Sultan Ismail. So make sure you watch that video after this one. You'll find the link at the end of the video as well as in the description. The Alaouite dynasty was founded by the man at the top of this chart, Sharif ibn Ali, although the family traced their lineage all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Fatima. The term Alaouite actually comes from the name Ali, the Prophet's cousin who was the husband of Fatima as well as the fourth caliph. You can find a more complete recounting of that family tree in a video we released this summer. This connection with the most revered person in Islam would certainly have bolstered the dynasty's political and spiritual legitimacy. It is believed that the Alaouite dynasty entered Morocco in the 13th century and settled in the southern oasis of Tafilalt, the same region where the founder of the Alaouite dynasty would first establish political power in the 1630s. Morocco at this time was a divided kingdom. The central authority of the Saadians, who had ruled a united Morocco at the beginning of the 17th century, had disintegrated. Sharif ibn Ali was caught up in the political chaos of the time, and he had to give up his authority to his son Muhammad ibn Sharif, who in 30 years of rule was unable to expand his family's territory. On the other hand, his brother Rashid ibn Sharif can be argued to have been the first Alaouite sultan of Morocco. After killing his brother Muhammad in 1664, Rashid ibn Sharif set his sights on the rest of the country. Within a few years, he had conquered eastern and northern Morocco, including the important city of Fez. In 1669, he took the historic city of Marrakesh and the rest of southern Morocco. This meant that by the time he died in 1672, all of Morocco was essentially under the Alawites' control. The next ruler was Sultan Ismail, who was undoubtedly the greatest Alaouite ruler. He ruled for a very long time, a whopping 55 years, from 1672 to 1727. During this time, the Alaouite dynasty's domain expanded beyond Morocco. It extended deep into the Sahara Desert in Western Africa, where they were able to conquer key cities such as the legendary Timbuktu and Djenné in what is now modern-day Mauritania and Mali. It should be mentioned that all of these accomplishments did not come easily to Sultan Ismail. The early part of his reign was filled with intrigues and rebellions, many of which came from his own family. As soon as he came to the throne, he had to fight off challenges to his rule from his nephews and brothers. Meanwhile, the kingdom was threatened by Ottoman presence in Algeria, and in some ways more worryingly, by certain tribes within Morocco. These constant threats demanded Ismail create a force strong enough to withstand them or lose everything. He decided to develop a large standing army that at its core had something known as the Abid al-Bukhari, known in English as the Black Guard. This corps was fiercely loyal to the Sultan, with some even calling it the Sultan's slaves. Though while it was largely comprised of African slaves, there was also a certain number of freedmen among the ranks. The Black Guard were given several years of training and would eventually be responsible for the most important responsibilities, such as collecting taxes and imposing the Sultan's authority across the realm. Sultan Ismail also had to confront the threat posed by Europeans. Like I mentioned before, prior to the Alawites coming to power, Morocco was in a long period of political anarchy, where many different factions vied for power. Some of these factions approached the Europeans for help, which meant that countries on the receiving end of these requests, like Spain and Portugal, had the opportunity to take advantage of these political divisions. So some Moroccan cities on the coast had been taken over by European states like the Spanish and the English, a legacy that continues to this day in enclaves such as Ceuta and Melilla. But apart from these few exceptions, Ismail was largely successful in kicking the Europeans out of Morocco. After roughly 20 years of consistently putting down one form of rebellion after another, Sultan Ismail shifted his attention to state building. He managed to impose government central authority all across the country, something which seemed impossible prior to the Alawites. He decided to make the city of Meknes his capital, converting it into a glorious imperial center. With the help of slave labor, including thousands of Europeans, Ismail undertook intense construction projects across his new capital, including buildings like the Kasbah of Moulay Ismail. His heavy-handed methods had resulted in greater peace and stability in Moroccan society, so trade flourished as well. But Sultan Ismail was not a gentle man. European accounts paint him in a villainously cruel manner. Even though most of those accounts were exaggerated, Ismail could be harsh and ruthless. More than anything, he was an absolutist. He had absolute power in the country, and nobody was allowed to even come close to rivaling him. Another interesting detail about Sultan Ismail is that he is said to have had more than 1,000 children. Although he had only 4 official wives, the Sultan had hundreds of concubines. This means that when it comes to siring children, he is one of the single most prolific men in recorded history. But unfortunately, the stability and prosperity he brought did not live beyond him. Sultan Ismail died in 1727, over 80 years old and having ruled for 55 years or so. When he died, the Abd al-Bukhari army corps had gotten so powerful that they eclipsed the royal family. They simply used various sons of Ismail as their own puppets. The country fragmented as different factions fought for their own interests, kind of like Morocco before the Alawites. This was the case for the next 20 years until in 1748 one of Ismail's younger sons, Abdallah, came to the throne and held it for the next 9 years. In 1757, Sultan Mohammed III came to the throne and had the task of rebuilding a country that had been devastated by 30 years of conflict. Yet in some ways, the previous 3 decades of devastation could be seen as a blessing in disguise for Sultan Mohammed. This is because it allowed him the opportunity to establish Alawite power in Morocco with different principles than his grandfather Ismail had done. From the get-go, Muhammad went after the Abd al-Bukhari, removing them from key positions and even leading massacres against them. Instead, he looked to use the tribes of Morocco as the backbone of his army. Yet in this regard, he much preferred to use diplomacy rather than to force the tribes into submission as his grandfather had done. Sultan Muhammad was also given the unenviable task of rebuilding many Moroccan cities after the disastrous earthquake of 1755, which brought widespread destruction to Morocco, Spain, and Portugal. Commercially, Sultan Muhammad opened the country even more by signing numerous trade treaties with European nations. This focus on commercialism allowed him to tax his citizens less, thereby further distancing himself from his grandfather and his harsh tax collection policies. Sultan Muhammad also made Morocco the first country in the world to recognize the newly formed United States of America in 1777, just a year after its declaration of independence. For all the good Muhammad did in his reign to get Morocco back on the right track and to distinguish himself from Ismail, he too failed to secure a stable succession. Upon his death in 1790, the country fragmented once again, with Muhammad's rebellious son Yazid being proclaimed the official sultan. But he would die 2 years later and be succeeded by his brother Suleiman. He himself had to deal with the fallout from his father's death, and it took him 6 years to control all of Morocco. Known as a scholar and a pious man, Suleiman had an orthodox religious outlook and even appreciated certain elements of the Wahhabist doctrine, which spoke of going back to a pure Islam without innovations. Suleiman reduced the amount of trade that was done with European nations as a result of the lack of trust he had in them. Despite having a fairly stable reign, in 1822 he was defeated and captured by the forces of a local religious leader. He died from natural causes soon after being released from captivity and was succeeded by his nephew Abd al-Rahman. Morocco's finances were in poor shape during Abd al-Rahman's reign. To fill his coffers, he turned back towards foreign trade, but he also decided to try to reinvigorate the dying practice of piracy. But this served only to produce confrontations with European nations such as Britain and Austria. In fact, Abd al-Rahman's reign is pivotal because it's really in this time when European involvement in Morocco begins to undermine Moroccan sovereignty. And so it was in his reign that external matters can be said to have mattered more than internal ones. In 1830, the French invaded neighboring Algeria, and the Sultan was caught in a difficult position of being implored by his Muslim subjects to defend fellow Muslim Algeria from a Christian power. But at the same time, knowing that his army stood no chance against the organized and advanced army of the French. Eventually, an Algerian resistance leader waging jihad against the French colonizers crossed the border to Morocco and was warmly received by many Moroccans. This was enough to provoke the Franco-Moroccan War of 1844, where in the space of 2 weeks the Moroccan forces were utterly routed. At the subsequent Treaty of Tangiers, Abd al-Rahman was forced to recognize the French takeover of Algeria. After this, the Sultan was convinced that he had to do what other Muslim rulers across the Islamic world were doing to counter the potential threat of European colonialism. That was to modernize his army. But Abd al-Rahman could not achieve this before the time he died in 1859, and that very same year the Moroccans went to war with the Spanish. The new Sultan, Mohammed IV, was defeated and forced to pay a large fee of 100 million pesetas as reparation to the Spanish. This huge sum forced the new Sultan into a serious debt, one that was inherited by his son and successor, Hassan I, who came to the throne in 1873. He shared his predecessor's belief that modernization was critical, but the economic reality of Morocco ensured that not much progress was made in this regard. The Sultan could not raise enough taxes from his rebellious citizens, and at the same time, Moroccan artisans and business owners could not compete with the mass production of industrialized Europe. So Morocco was forced to engage more and more in foreign trade with the same European nations they were afraid would colonize them. In time, this manifested into commercial privileges that were resented by Moroccan society, especially by the religious class known as the ulama, because to them it showed greater European penetration of Morocco. This goes to show that Hassan I suffered the same conundrum as his grandfather Abd al-Rahman. He found himself in a difficult position between two dangerous foes to his authority, the Europeans and the Moroccan citizenry. But despite all these issues, Sultan Hassan was able to put down the various rebellions against his authority and still work towards modernizing Morocco. Next we have Sultan Abd al-Aziz, the son of Hassan, who succeeded his father in 1894. The issue of keeping European imperialism at bay intensified during Abd al-Aziz's reign. This was best demonstrated by the First Moroccan Crisis of 1905 to 1906, where Germany wanted to challenge France's growing influence over Morocco. It was resolved with the Algeciras Conference in 1906, where French influence over the country was upheld. But as all these external matters were being dealt with, Abd al-Aziz was losing more and more legitimacy with his own people, to the point that he had to step down in favor of his brother, Abd al-Hafid, in 1908. It was not until 1909 that Abd al-Hafid was able to assert his authority over the entire country, though. But the precedent of growing European domination over the country's affairs had already been set. In 1911, there was the Second Moroccan Crisis, again between the French and the Germans. This was a major international crisis which can be seen as a prelude to World War I. The crisis was concluded with Morocco losing its independence in 1912 to the French after the Sultan signed the Treaty of Fez, which established the French Protectorate in Morocco that would last until 1956. Abd al-Hafid abdicated a few months later in 1912. He was succeeded by his brother Yusuf. Later that year, the Spanish Protectorate of Morocco was also established, which gave Spain control of 2 strips of territory in northern and southern Morocco. But since the Sultan wielded little authority anyway and was seen as a puppet of the French or Spanish, a non-Alaouite claimant to the throne burst onto the scene in 1912. Ahmad al-Hiba proclaimed himself Sultan and was accepted as such by various prominent cities throughout southern Morocco, but he was defeated in battle by the French in 1912 and subsequently lost his authority. Sultan Yusuf's reign was characterized by the French and Spanish imposing their colonialist policies throughout Morocco. In turn, this resulted in various rebellions against the colonizers, the most serious of which was by the Rif Berbers who rebelled in the 1920s. Under their leader Abd al-Karim, they were able to repeatedly defeat the Spanish using guerrilla warfare tactics. They even managed to set up a short-lived state in the north, the Republic of the Rif, from 1921 to 1926. Even though the rebellion soon became a large-scale war, the Rif were eventually defeated when the French and Spanish joined to make a concerted effort to get rid of them. Also in this time, Sultan Yusuf moved the nation's capital from Fez to Rabat, where it has since remained. Yusuf died in 1927 and was succeeded by his son, Mohammed V. By this time, the Moroccan nationalist movement was in full swing. They were fervently against the French, even more so after the French tried to change the legal system in areas which were primarily Berber, but keep Arab regions with the same Sharia legal system they had always had. To Moroccans, this was an attempt to divide and conquer them, and even more problematically, some nationalists viewed this as the Christian French trying to remove Islam from Moroccan society, a super touchy subject for all Muslim countries in this period. Large protests followed. Even the young Sultan Mohammed V complained to the French. Regardless, the French colonialists put the protests down and passed the legislation. It is during Mohammed V's reign that World War II took place. Though France was quickly overrun by Nazi Germany, this was no relief for Morocco, as the Germans quickly established the French Vichy government, which included the Protectorate of Morocco. During this time, however, Sultan Mohammed was able to wield enough power to block efforts to deport Moroccan Jews to European concentration camps, providing significant protection to Morocco's sizable Jewish community. Throughout the course of World War II, the Sultan and Moroccan nationalists began to see a ray of hope for a post-colonial Morocco. After the war, calls for Moroccan independence were ignored by the French. In 1953, the increasingly assertive Sultan Mohammed V was deposed at gunpoint by the French and forced into exile. He was replaced by his cousin, Mohammed ben Arafa, but there was too much popular agitation against Mohammed ben Arafa and the French colonizers. Mohammed V had become an important symbol of Moroccan nationalism, and the nation wanted him back. France was fighting a war in Algeria against nationalists, and they couldn't afford for war to break out in Morocco as well. So the French made a deal with Mohammed V for him to come back and govern Morocco as an independent country in 1955. The same year, the Spanish promised to end their protectorate over the northern and southern strips they controlled as well. In 1957, the term king was preferred over sultan. King Mohammed V died in 1961 and was succeeded by his son Hassan, who became Hassan II. He ruled for 38 years, from 1961 to 1999. His younger brother, Moulay Abdallah, married the daughter of the first Lebanese Prime Minister, Riyad Sohl. King Hassan's reign is really important for the Morocco that we see today because it was in his reign that the country had to deal with really difficult questions, like how will Morocco be ruled? Will there be an absolutist king who reigns by rule of decree? Or will there be a more democratic component to the country's governance? In 1962, he presented a constitution which decided that Morocco will have a monarchy as well as a multi-party parliamentary system. But almost immediately, King Hassan initiated a period known as the Years of Lead, which were characterized by a strongman authoritarian style of governance that led to thousands of dissidents being jailed or killed. This turbulent part of Moroccan history included two prominent but failed assassination attempts at the king in 1971 and 1972. In this period, King Hassan focused on advancing the Moroccan economy, an endeavor in which he made progress by adopting a market-based economy. King Hassan also recovered large portions of what is known as the Western Sahara by fighting a 16-year war. Even today, the Western Sahara is still a contested territory by the Moroccan government and the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. By the early 1990s, King Hassan had allowed for a shift towards democracy and relaxed the suppression of dissidents before his death in 1999. And that brings us to King Mohammed VI, the current king of Morocco and son of the former King Hassan. Although King Mohammed has been linked by some to corruption, he has for the most part distanced himself from his authoritarian father. Instead, Mohammed has largely embraced reforms in Moroccan society, especially in reaction to the 2011 and 2012 Moroccan protests connected to the Arab Spring. Mohammed's son Moulay Hassan is next in line to inherit the throne, followed by the king's brother Moulay Rashid. And that concludes our look at the family tree of the Alaouite dynasty in Morocco. Make sure you follow the link on screen to watch the video by Hikmah History. Thanks for watching.